Hey everyone, welcome to another fantastic live stream. Today we're talking about housing affordability, and we all know that it's terrible right now. It's in the dumps, but we've got some good news. I've got some news articles and some things to go over today, talking about how home affordability is actually trending in the right direction. So yes, that means that on average, homes are getting more affordable. Now, when we talk about how much more affordable, maybe the news isn't quite as good, but hey, any improvement is good improvement. So for you home buyers out there that are watching this, don't lose hope, don't lose faith. It looks like things are trending in the right direction. Plus, we're also going to talk about a little bit about rates and the Fed and how that might impact things. So let's get right into it, and we'll just start with the first article that we have queued up and ready to go. So as you can see, we're going to be talking about the housing affordability, and it is moving in the right direction, according to some economists. And here's what you need to know. This article comes from CNBC. It's very recent, actually came out yesterday afternoon, and some encouraging signs. So mortgage application payments decreased to $2,167 in June, a 2.4% decline from $2,219 in May, according to the Purchase Applications Payment Index by the Mortgage Bankers Association, or also known as the MBA. So down 2.4%. And so what they're talking about here is essentially when you go to get a mortgage and you're messing with the paperwork and doing the application, you're going to get a projection of your payment based upon, whatever X sales price that you're kind of estimating or budgeting for. And then they factor in your down payment, your credit, closing costs, things like that. And they come up with your, estimated payment. So we're seeing that on mortgage applications, that payment is about 2.4% lower in June than it was in May. Now, keep in mind, we've talked about this before, real estate data and statistics, it's always delayed. So it's always behind a little bit. Usually it's about a month behind. So I know that we're in the end of July, but we're only working with data up until June, basically. And then in a week or two, we'll have July's data. So keep that in mind when we're looking at stuff. Home buyer affordability conditions are beginning to improve, according to experts. So, here we have a very a happy couple that just got keys to their home. This is a stock photo. This isn't real. Although the feeling probably is very real for people that have been able to accomplish the dream and goal of home ownership. Obviously, in the last about 4 years, it's been a very treacherous road. It's been a very expensive road to go down. So I can understand why these people look so happy, even if this is a staged photo. Home affordability has slightly improved for buyers this summer, according to a recent report. The median new mortgage payment was $2,167 in June, a 2.4% decline from $2,219 in May, according to new data from the Mortgage Bankers Association. The index measures how new monthly mortgage payments change over time relative to income. So it's a very good measure of affordability. A decrease in the index shows borrower affordability improved, which can happen when loan application amounts and mortgage rates decrease or home buyer earnings grow. So how does affordability increase? Well, that either means that home payments, therefore prices, have gone down, or homeowners' income has gone up. Remember, affordability doesn't mean pricing, although it can be connected to pricing, because like I said, if prices go down and all else stays the same, then affordability goes up. Or if people start making more money, then they have more money that they can comfortably spend on homeownership costs. So that's also a way to bring that affordability level up a little bit. Home buyer affordability conditions improved for the second straight month as declining mortgage rates continue to increase purchasing power and is enticing some borrowers back into the housing market. MBA, according to MBA's Associate Vice President of Housing Economics, they wrote in a release. So we are getting a little bit of relief in mortgage interest rates. We are getting a little bit of relief in pricing, but both of those come with a caveat. So first things first, yes, we're getting a little bit of relief with mortgage interest rates. It's not a whole lot. It's been maybe a quarter of a point, maybe for some borrowers up to a half of a point, but not a whole lot of difference. However, it is some help. That's good. It's going in the positive direction. The other thing to consider is the fact that there's a little bit more inventory coming online. However, that is the caveat for this, is that it really depends on where you're looking. And the next article I'm going to show you, I picked it specifically because it has really good visual representations of where the inventory is in the United States right now. And so that's something to kind of think about, is that, yeah, inventory as a whole might be coming up, but maybe not in the specific market you're looking in. Or maybe in the specific market you're looking in, inventory has really exploded and you might be able to get things for, under the asking price, or you might not have to compete with multiple offers, which gives you more leverage as a buyer. And therefore, affordability in those areas could be increasing for homebuyers. Lawrence Yoon, who's this name, Mr. Yoon's name comes up all the time on our live streams here. He's the chief economist and senior vice president of research at the National Association of Realtors, also sees promising indicators for home buyers. Housing affordability is improving ever so modestly, but it is moving in the right direction, he said. The bigger picture shows payments are still high. The median loan amount on new applications fell to $320,512 in June from $325,000 in May, a sign that home price growth is moderating as well, according to the MBA data provided to CNBC. So this is just showing that for new mortgage applications, previously in May, that loan amount was $325,000. In June, that fell to $320,000 and change. So about a $4,500 difference, which means the overall loan that's needed is smaller to purchase given the same house. A slight decrease in mortgage rates in the month of June definitely helped buyers, said Yoon, which is something we've been hearing for a long time. And interest rates are a very complicated beast. The Fed decides based on certain economic conditions what that interest rate should be. Now, again, the Fed is not deciding on the mortgage interest rate. They're basically deciding on the interest rate for the banking industry. But those two rates move in lockstep. So when the Fed lowers the rate, mortgage bankers look at it and go, okay, well, we can lower our rate. When the Fed raises the rates, mortgage bankers go, okay, well, we need to raise our rate. So they are related, but they're not the same. It's been talked about for a while. Mortgage rates are going to come down. We're going to get a cut. And it doesn't look like we're going to get one at this meeting that the Fed just got out of. They just wrapped up a meeting today, actually, and no mortgage rate cuts came from that. However, Mr. Powell did allude that September could be the time for rates. Now, I wouldn't put too much stock in that because we've been hearing next month for this entire year. Excuse me. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of faith. Obviously, it's good to be optimistic. But there's also some caveats to that, which we're going to get to in a little video clip that I have later on in the stream. You're definitely going to want to stick around to see that, because we're going to talk about some of the pros and the cons with this interest rate movement. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage declined to 6.78% on July 25th, down from 7.22% on May 2nd, according to Freddie Mac data via the Fed, which is good movement. So here we can see the graph. The good old days. Back in December of 2020, we were in the basically the throes of the pandemic at that time. The economy was slowing, and the Fed said, you know what, we're going to cut interest rates. We're going to try to incentivize people to, spend money when and where they can and help the economy get through this tough time. And boy, 2.67%, it looks like, was where it bottomed out at. 2.66 is where it bottomed out at. And boy, if this will never be seen again. I don't think we'll ever see rates like this ever again. In fact, we never saw them previously. I don't think we're going to see them ever again. And you can see the course that they took, going up, and then bingo, we had huge inflation in 2021 and at the start of 22. And the Fed said, we got to pull some levers. We got to do some stuff. And rates absolutely skyrocketed in a very, very short amount of time. And this whole thing has really added to the pressure that is the housing and affordability problem that we have. You can see here, relatively, we're at an okay spot in terms of the last couple of years. We did see, area 6.67 back in December of 2023, which is basically what we're at now. So we're getting a little bit of help, and certainly off of the high that we had back in October, where we were flirting with going into the 8% range. So certainly much better than that. But again, interest rates have given us some relief in the last few months, nothing substantial. But we're going to talk about why, even if they do go down a little bit further, why that may not make a difference. But that's going to be later on in the stream. But it's a very small improvement in context, said Yoon. The typical monthly mortgage payment has essentially doubled from pre-COVID years. Before COVID, a $1,000 mortgage payment was the norm. Today, it's above $2,000, he said. In the bigger picture, it is a substantial increase on pre-COVID conditions. Yet, on a month-to-month basis, it is a slight improvement, Yoon said. So again, it's all perspective. We're doing better than we were a year ago, but compared to 4 and 5 years ago, clearly the housing issue still remains to be at the forefront and is a big issue for particularly home buyers, not so much home sellers, but definitely home buyers. More sellers, less competition for buyers. So this is where it gets a little bit better for the buying contingent out there. Investors think the Federal Reserve could cut interest rates about 3 times in the later half of the year, which would further improve housing affordability, Yoon added. So we're a little over halfway through the year. They think that there could be a couple rate cuts. Typically speaking, a lot of people will say, oh, it's an election year. They're going to cut rates. Historically speaking, during election years, the Fed tends to cut rates. It juices the economy a little bit. Some political theories at play there. So far, no rate cuts this year. But like I said, we've heard the entire year, rate cuts are coming, rate cuts are coming. We've yet to see it. But it remains to be seen. Obviously, economic data is encouraging for a rate cut. The main economic data that the Fed looks at is inflation, core inflation numbers, and also unemployment and job gain and job loss. So we have had a little bit of an uptick in unemployment, still doing very, very good, still considered fully employed as an economy. But we've had a slight uptick in unemployment, and also inflation has cooled a little bit. It's still above the Fed's target rate, but it's certainly doing much better than it was, 8 to 12 months ago. While the housing market isn't yet a buyer's market, more supply and declining rates indeed create favorable conditions for buyers, according to experts. I wouldn't use the word create favorable conditions. I would have put another word in here that says create more favorable conditions, because conditions now still aren't super favorable for buyers. Interest rates are still quite high. And depending on where you're looking in my area, so again, I'm in a town called Claremont, California. It's about 40 miles east of downtown Los Angeles. So I'm in a suburb of LA. I am in LA County. And I'll tell you what, anything that's in LA County, Orange County, San Diego County, Santa Barbara County, it's flying off the shelves. Still very, very competitive. Still multiple offer situation on a lot of homes, and still full price or over full price sales. Every once in a while, you'll see a property sell for maybe 1 or 2% below the asking price, but that's in your less desirable communities, further on the outskirts of the urban areas, or properties that need some work or have a location challenge, or things like that. The market is certainly tilting more towards buyers, said Chen Zhao, the economic research lead at Redfin, an online real estate brokerage firm, who said the market is balancing itself. While there's still an affordability challenge broadly, conditions are moving towards a more neutral market, says a senior economist at Zillow. So yeah, we're getting there. We're moving there, but we're not there yet. It's almost like, it's tough because it's like chipping away at a huge project. It's like when you're in school and you've got to write a 20-page paper. We're at the spot where we have 2 pages done. So we've made some progress, but we still have a long way to go. And there's still a lot of work ahead when it comes to neutralizing the housing market in the United States. In some areas, buyers are getting pickier as more listings pop up. Total housing inventory registered at the end of June was 1.32 million units, up 3.1% from May and 23.4% from a year ago, according to NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors. Unsold inventory is at a 4.1 month supply, up from 3.7 months in May and 3.1 months a year ago. So all this means is that supply is up, which is a good thing. That's been probably one of the biggest issues that we've had over the last 3.5 years or so. We just have not had enough supply, which keeps prices high. So this is trending well. Again, this is national averages. This is, real estate's hyper local. You've probably heard me say that before. If you've ever watched my streams, real estate is hyper local. From city to city, county to county, state to state, it all varies widely. So while these are national averages in your area, it might not be that way. You might have an inventory crunch. It could be completely different. So let me know, pop down in the comments below. What are you seeing in your local marketplace? How is inventory? Are there bidding wars? Are properties still going over their asking price? Leave me a comment. I would love to know what's going on in your local marketplace. It's very good news for the buyer side, said Yoon, as you're less likely to get caught up in a bidding war. Competition is easing fastest in the South, where all major Southern markets except Dallas and Raleigh are either neutral or buyer friendly, according to the June 2024 Zillow Housing Market Report, which is true. The South seems to be where things are easing the quickest. The next article will have some good visual representations of what inventory looks like in the South and how it's changed. With more inventory, that does certainly mean that buyers have more options, said Selma Hepp, chief economist at CoreLogic. CoreLogic is a real estate data company, very reliable, very good. But that is very regional. See, that's what I was saying. And the ones with the most increases in inventories, they're struggling with other issues like high insurance costs. Some sellers are cutting prices to attract buyers. Sellers are having to do a little bit more to entice buyers, he said. We see 1 in 4 sellers are cutting their prices, the most for any June in the last 6 years, to try to sway buyers. About 1 in 5, or 19.8% of homes for sale in June had a price cut, the highest level of any June on record, according to Redfin. That's up 14.4% from a year ago. So as you can see, it's kind of the overarching theme of this article is that things have been improving. They are getting better for buyers. The rates are getting a little bit more friendly. Inventory is going up, and it's going up at year over year, a decent pace, but again, still a long way to go. Sellers are always trying to maximize their prices, but the sellers should be mindful that there's more competition, Yoon said. Home builders are also trying to attract buyers. About 31% of builders cut prices to increase home sales, up from 29% in June and 25% in May, according to a July 2024 survey by the National Association of Home Builders. However, the number one thing for buyers is to stay within budget, Yoon said. Just because mortgage rates decline does not mean time. They didn't write this right. Rates decline does not mean it's time to overstress their budget. But that's always been the kind of the theme when you're home buying. Of course, when rates are higher, it does, budget's a little bit more conscious. When rates are lower, you can be a little bit more loose with the budget, but still, you don't want to be in a difficult spot by paying for a house that you can't afford and by, going way over the budget. So we're going to go to the next article. And this one I really like because, we're talking about affordability today, and affordability is tied very closely to two things, which we talked about: interest rates and inventory. So this next one kind of talks about where the housing market is shifting and in what way. So there's a couple different interactive maps that are really good. This is why I wanted to use it, because it's a very good visual representation of where the inventory is and how it's changing. To offer a better understanding and overview of the current resale housing market, we compiled a few interactive maps from a few Resi Club's recent reports this month. The big picture: there is growing weakness in some pockets of the Southwest and Southeast, particularly in Gulf markets and Florida, while many resale housing markets in the Midwest, Northeast, and Southern California still remain tight. So median days on market by metro. So circle size by number of active homes for sale. So the bigger the circle, the larger the number of homes. The colors denote 20, mid is 50, and red is 80. So you can see that the areas with the larger red and more red circles, we've got more inventory. The darker the blue circles, the less inventory that we have. And this is homes for sale in June 2024. So this is as of last month. So you can see Florida is getting hit really, really hard in some of these areas. Punta Gorda, which I've heard so much about in the news, it's really gotten hit on inventory. As you can see, the days on markets are going up. In June of 2022, it was just 39 days on market. Now in June 2024, it is 80 days on market. So you can see this area here is being hit hard in terms of inventory growing substantially. And again, the Gulf, which is what the article kind of alluded to. So parts of Mississippi, Louisiana, areas of Georgia, Alabama, just having a hard time with inventory. The other area that's gotten hit, Austin is a big one. It's in here somewhere, but Austin's gotten hit pretty good. And like I said, all of the areas that are kind of the more red or orange, they're getting hit hard. There's inventory. So this is where, prices are going to be most relaxed. The market is going to be ease up. We're going to see in other areas here, like parts of Colorado, Edwards and Glenwood Springs, little pockets here where they've got some inventory. So if you're looking for Colorado, these are going to be some good areas where you might be able to have less competition, maybe get something for under the market price. Buyers will have a little bit more leverage. However, in the Denver, Aurora, Lakewood, Colorado Springs area, not doing much better. I mean, look at that. Back in June of 2021, just 9 days on market, which is crazy. It's gone up to 34. 34 is still a very, very low number for days on market, historically speaking, on average. But man, to go from 9 to 34, a little bit of an increase. We can see in going out west here, in San Jose, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, always a very hot spot. San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, lots of blue dots. Inventory here is still a big challenge. Number of active homes, just not very much. Here's how Realtor.com, the source from which we get the raw days on market data, defines it. The median number of days property listings spend on the market within the specified geography during the specified month. Time spent on the market is defined as the time between the initial listing of the property and either its closing date or the date it's taken off the market. So when you see 40 days on market, that's the time it comes up on the market. And on the 40th day, it closes, escrow, and sells. So 40 days is actually really, really short. Given that the standard escrow is 30 days, that means that the time on the open and available market was really only 10 days, the difference between the escrow length and the day on market length. So anytime you see a property that has days on market of 40 or 50 or even 60, that's relatively quick. That means they were only, marketing the property, having it available for showings, things like that for between 10 and 30 days. Regionally, there is much greater weakness around the Gulf, including much of Florida, while many markets in the Midwest, Northeast, and SoCal still have much fewer days on market. So here's the inventory one. This is the one that's really, really interesting to me. Active housing inventory for sale compared to pre-pandemic levels. Metro shift between June 2019 and June 2024. So this is a 5-year span that we're talking about, and it's going to mirror the previous map quite well. So again, the kind of the more brown areas are negative 50% inventory. If it's kind of this just gray white, it's 0%, and the more kind of teal blue color, it's 50% more inventory. So as you can see in some of these areas, like here it is, Punta Gorda, plus 70% in inventory from pre-COVID times. Now, a lot of that has to do, and this was alluded to in the previous article, insurance and HOA. So Florida has extremely high insurance costs. And it's very common to have HOAs in Florida because of all the condos that are there. So HOAs and insurance costs have gone up a lot, and those are kind of connected. Oftentimes with an HOA, part of the homeowner's insurance is included and paid for by the HOA. Well, if the cost for insurance goes up, the HOA has to pay that increased cost. Well, they're going to pass that on to the homeowners by raising HOA dues and fees. Likewise, same goes for your individual homeowners that have insurance increases. Obviously, the Florida area is prone to tropical storms, hurricanes, flooding, things like that, which is going to drive up your insurance prices to the point where some people are having to sell and leave because they can't afford the insurance. They can afford their house, they can afford the mortgage, but they can't afford the insurance payment, which is obviously a problem. If you can't afford insurance, well, then you really can't afford the cost of living there. You could elect to not have insurance, but if you have a mortgage on the property, that's going to be a requirement by the mortgage provider. If the home is owned free and clear, you do not have to have insurance, but that is a risky proposition, especially given an area that is known to have some natural disasters in the form of hurricanes and flooding. The other area here that's notable, Austin, Texas, plus 41%. You see back in June of 2021, just under 2,400 units of inventory, all the way to June of 2024, just 3 years later, 10,000. It's gone up 5 times just in those 3 years. That's an astonishing increase in inventory. So areas like Austin, we're going to see some price cuts probably from sellers because as inventory increases, the sellers that are selling and are on the market are going to have to entice buyers somehow. So the main way to do that is by cutting the price. So, what we're looking at here is an interesting connection. Again, the South and the Gulf states and Florida. There's one other pocket that's where inventory is popping a little bit, and that's here in Idaho. Idaho Falls, Rexburg, Blackfoot, Pocatello, Ontario, a little bit in Boise, not as bad as the rest. This area has some very large increases in inventory, and that's because Idaho has been a hotspot for new building. So that was brought on because it's what we consider a pandemic boom town, similar to Austin, similar to Florida, where when the pandemic arose, people thought, hey, I can now work from anywhere. Housing in some of the desirable areas on your coasts it's too expensive. So people thought, let's just say, for example, I'm living in Silicon Valley. I'm living in San Francisco, San Jose. There's COVID. I'm locked down. I'm working from home for the foreseeable future. I'm in this tiny, tiny apartment that I have to pay $2,500 a month for. Heck, I can just take my computer, my laptop, move to Idaho. I can buy an entire house for $2,500 a month, and I can still work there. And there we go. So a lot of those shifts happened. And when that happened, builders said, hey, there's demand in this area like Idaho. We need to build some more homes so that we can sell more homes. So we had an increase in building. And now, as we shift away from pandemic era working, obviously work from home is more popular than it's ever been, but we are seeing a return back to sort of in-office work and less working from home as standard. So areas that were pandemic boom towns, like your Idaho areas, your Idaho Falls, your Boise's, your Ontario, Austin, New Orleans, Panama City, Florida, Punta Gorda, things like that. These pandemic boom towns are being hit with huge increases in inventory, which is going to bring competition down. San Diego has been one of these outliers where San Diego is beautiful. It's a great town. It's a great city. It's a beach community, highly desirable. And this is one of those towns that it didn't get the memo that there's a housing problem. Things there just continue to sell very, very well. And as you can see, they're really not doing too much better on inventory than they were even pre-pandemic. So it's quite interesting to see how some of these areas are just kind of immune to it. Of course, over here in New York, Newark, New Jersey, right now, I know the areas of New Jersey are just absolutely on fire because people from the metropolitan New York, downtown New York City area are electing to move out further into the suburbs, which is New Jersey. And so they've been hit quite a bit in terms of their inventory issues. Chicago, also another one, minus 65% inventory there, quite a big problem. So in these areas, prices are going to remain high, inventory will remain tight, and there will be bidding wars, most definitely. When assessing home price momentum, it's important to monitor active listing and months of supply. If active listings start to rapidly increase as homes remain on the market for longer periods of time, it may indicate potential future pricing weaknesses. Conversely, a rapid decline in active listings could suggest that a market is heating up. So very, very basic, very simple, supply and demand. If you start to see supply increase, well, that means that you could have some flexibility on pricing. If you start to see supply decrease, that means that you're going to have less flexibility on pricing. Most of the Midwest, Northeast, and West Coast remain well below pre-pandemic inventory levels. In contrast, many parts of the Gulf Coast, including Tampa and New Orleans and the Mountain West, have ticked back above pre-pandemic inventory levels. So this last chart is 1 year change in metro level home prices between June 2023 and June 2024. So blue means that there has been an increase in prices. Red means there's been a decrease in prices. And this is from June 23 to June 24. So just in the last year. So as you can see, lots of blue on the map, which means that overall home prices have increased. Again, Florida has some spots where it's decreased a little bit. Austin has gone down 4.7%. New Orleans, Louisiana has gone down to about 7.2%. So, it's just one of these things that varies based on the area, but we're still seeing this kind of the South area and the East Coast, in Florida here, definitely feeling, I don't want to say the hurt. I don't know if that would, make sense. But however, to definitely have an issue with pricing. Your areas, in the Northeast, West Coast, sort of the Midwest here, prices increasing 8%, or around those areas. Ohio has been a little bit of a hot spot. It's picking up quite a bit. Chicago, even Michigan, areas like Detroit, all these areas have seen price increases, which pretty interesting given the climate and the landscape of what's going on. So we're going to go to the third article. And the reason I wanted to share this is because this is just always, oh, I hit the wrong button. Let me get this back on the screen here. Is the housing market going to crash? And, this is always a big thing. People ask about this pretty much constantly. What's going to happen with housing? What's going to happen with the market? So here we have it. This is article was released just a few days ago. Some key takeaways here, and we probably won't go through this entire article because we do have a little bit of a video clip to get to, but we're going to go over some of the more interesting stuff. Mortgage rates are high, but home prices keep rising. Blame the lack of housing supply. Economists predict that any market correction will be modest and not on the scale of the Great Recession. So sorry out there to all the crash bros, all of those people on YouTube and news outlets that are pumping that there's going to be a real estate crash. I think by now they know that they're wrong. And I don't know how many times I've heard YouTubers and other people on media news outlets talk about, oh, the crash is imminent. There's no way it won't crash. All this is going to be a problem. We're going to have foreclosures and baby boomers are going to give up their homes, all of this stuff. And it just simply hasn't happened. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So if you're a crash bro in the chat, I am sorry to burst your bubble, but doesn't look like it's going to happen. Experts do not expect a housing market crash due to low inventory, strict lending standards, and other factors. To the dismay of would-be homebuyers, property prices just keep rising. It seems nothing, not even some of the highest mortgage rates of the past 2 decades, can stop the continued climb of home prices. Are they destined for a fall? Here's what the experts say about a potential housing market crash. Market fluctuations. The U.S. housing market had finally started slowing in late 2022, and home prices seemed poised for a correction. But a strange thing happened on the way to the housing market crash. Home values started rising again. Very strange. So much for the now quaint notion that the post-pandemic housing recession would reverse some of the outsized price gains in homes. Prices hit another new all-time high in June, according to the National Association of Realtors, which reports that median existing home prices were up 4.1% over last year, the 12th month in a row for year-over-year jumps. June 2024's median of 426,900 surpassed May's record high of 419,300. Before that, the record was 413,800, reached in June 2022. Prices will remain firm and will not decline on a national level. A basic supply and demand. The main driver of record home prices is a 1-2 punch straight from Econ 101, a lack of housing supply coupled with the strong demand. Inventories have been growing but remain frustratingly tight, with NAR's June data showing a 4.1 month supply. Not even high mortgage rates have slowed price appreciation. For instance, in October 2023, home values held steady even as mortgage rates soared to 8%, their highest level in more than 23 years. The fundamental reason for the run-up in prices is heightened demand and lack of supply, which has been the name of the game for quite a while. You're not going to see house prices decline, says Rick Arviello, head of mortgage firm New American Funding. There's just not enough inventory. Skylar Olson, chief economist at Zillow, agrees about the supply and demand imbalance. She predicts home prices will keep rising for the rest of this year. Welcome news for sellers, but not so great for first-time home buyers struggling to become homeowners. We're not in that space where things are suddenly going to be more affordable. In fact, the trend is quite the opposite, according to Realtor.com's May 2024 Housing Trends Report. High mortgage rates have increased the monthly cost of financing the typical home after 20% down payment by 7.1%. So is there going to be a market crash? No, there is not. There's still far more buyers than sellers, and that means a meaningful price decline can't happen. There's just generally not enough supply. And if we looked at what happened in 2008, supply just skyrocketed as a lot of foreclosures hit the market because people that got mortgages that started to default because they were not qualified for those mortgages. They started to default on their payments and they turned their houses over to the bank. That led to a huge tidal wave of inventory, and there was an oversupply of homes. And again, basic Econ 101, when you have a very, very, very high supply, the price tends to go down. If you have a really, really high supply and the demand starts to be lower, prices go down further and even faster. You've got an entire generation of pent-up demand. We're in this fascinating position of tremendous demand and too little inventory. When interest rates do start to come down, it'll be another boom and bust cycle. And that's one of the things I want to talk about in terms of a double-edged sword. Yes, all these people are saying we need to increase affordability. How are we going to increase affordability? Well, if rates go down, the money will go further. But what happens when rates go down is that more buyers are enticed because their money goes further. And then when more buyers are enticed, demand goes up. When demand goes up, typically prices go up unless supply goes up at the same rate, which with housing is very difficult to do. You can't just simply, print more homes. You can't just make more homes overnight or even over a week. It takes a long time. The home building process is complicated and technical, and it also varies based on where you're building the home. Nars Yoon notes that some once hot markets like Austin, Texas have seen small declines in prices, but he sees little chance of falling prices on a broader scale. Prices will remain firm and not decline on a national level. So here's some key housing market statistics. According to Bankrate's weekly national survey of large lenders, the average mortgage interest rate on a 30-year loan was 6.9% as of July 24th. Existing home sales fell 5.4% from May to June, and also from June 2023 to June 2024. We talked about the median sales price. A total of 18,574 U.S. homes had foreclosure filings, default notices, scheduled auctions, or bank repossessions. That's down a significant 22.7% year over year. So long story short, there's just not going to be a real estate crash. It doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. Here you can see we've got a graph of home prices, and they've risen sharply since the pandemic. Here we were in March 1st, 2020, which was just weeks before we had the official pandemic declared. And just 280,700 for the median price. And now here we are, 426,000, a huge increase. So again, just 5 basic reasons why there will be no housing market crash. Inventories are still too low. Builders aren't building quickly enough to meet demand. A lot of people think that this is on purpose. If home builders build slowly, they can keep that supply a little bit lower. And therefore, when supply is a little bit lower, they can get a little bit more money per home. Because again, if they just flooded the market with supply, even though it's difficult to do when it comes to building homes, but if they did, they could potentially see the value of their asset drop, which obviously they don't want. I do think builders should be incentivized to build homes at a little bit quicker pace. The big question is, well, how do you do that? Obviously the government could step in and give some type of tax break, some type of monetary incentive, but that's all very complicated stuff. Demographic trends are creating new buyers. There's strong demand for homes on many fronts. Many Americans who already owned homes decided during the pandemic that they needed bigger homes, especially with the rise of remote working. Millennials are a huge group, and they're in their prime home buying years. And Hispanics are a growing demographic, also keen on home ownership. Lending standards remain strict. In 2007, liar loans, in which borrowers didn't need to document their income, were common. We refer to them as ninja loans: no income, no job, no assets. Lenders offered mortgages to just about anyone, regardless of their credit history or down payment size. Today, lenders impose tough standards on borrowers, which is absolutely true. It's much more difficult to get a loan today than it was back in 2008. And foreclosure activity is muted. Just not a lot of foreclosure going in. So now we're going to hop over to YouTube, and we're going to take a look at this video. This is from CNBC. I'm going to get this off the screen so that we can see everything. And this is how a little news snippet about how the consumer is struggling with home affordability.
New data out today on housing. June housing starts stronger than expected, driven by multifamily activity. Single family starts and permits pulled back, though. Home builders have been on a tear lately after June CPI report showed inflation cooling and boosted the odds of a Fed cut. So joining us now, Zelman & Associates Managing Director Alan Ratner. Alan, it's great to have you back on. That's exactly where I'm going to start, because we've seen this stagnation, stagflation, if you will, in the housing market. What shifts it, and what's contributing to the run recently we have seen in the home builder stocks?
Hey, Morgan, thanks for having me. The last several months, I would say the new home market has been pretty stagnant. The spring selling season got off to a good start earlier in the year. And right around March, April, we started to see things hit a little bit of a wall, not falling off of a cliff. But I think what we're seeing is the consumer is just struggling from an affordability perspective.
Oh, right. Yeah. And if the consumer is struggling from an affordability perspective, they're not going to be able to afford the product that you're building. Also, again, new home builds are kind of specific to regions. New home builds and large new home builds tend to be in, areas where there's just more land. I don't want to say it's more rural, but just areas where there is more land available. So a lot of those areas are a little further out from, desirable city centers or urban areas. So typically buying a new home means you're going to have to commute a little bit because it's probably further out. Now, every once in a while, you'll see new homes being built, closer to the city, but it's just harder. So I think that there are some people out there that are going, I don't want to pay these prices for a new home. It's still too expensive, and it's not really in the most desirable location, which probably tempered some demand from people for new home builds.
with rates, albeit down more recently, still hovering in the high sixes. Prices are up a lot. And, at least from an employment perspective, things have kind of slowed down a little bit. So a little bit of a digestion period. What the market is showing right now, though, is a lot of optimism that the tamer inflation metrics are going to translate to much lower mortgage rates in the back half of the year and kind of solve that affordability problem. And that might be a little bit of an optimistic.
I do think that is a little bit optimistic. I don't think mortgage rates are going to be the savior for affordability, because at the end of the day, the supply and demand issue is still very relevant, and it's going to be relevant for years to come.
View.
Why is that optimistic? Because at most, maybe you get 50 basis points and it doesn't really change the equation that much?
Well, not to get too technical, but the bond market's already pricing in rate cuts. So the simple act of the Fed cutting is not necessarily going to have.
That is a key thing. I'm going to go back. I'm going to rewind it just a little bit, because what this guy said is key.
Not to get too technical, but the bond market's already pricing in rate cuts. So the simple act of the Fed cutting is not necessarily going to have it.
The bond market has already priced in the rate cuts, and it happens all of the time. When the bond market, which is connected to mortgage interest rates, when they get a sense of like, oh, the Fed's going to cut rates, they've released good news, economic data has shown that we're in a spot where rates could be cut. And then you have encouraging words from the Fed and Jerome Powell that keep talking about, okay, rate cuts aren't off the table. It looks like they're going to be coming. Like, we're going to get one or two before the end of the year, or maybe more. The market goes, oh, okay, great. Let's plan for that right now. So you'll also hear another term where it's already been baked in. So that happens a lot where, the Fed will say, we're lowering rates today. We've knocked them down 50 basis points. And you go look at mortgage interest rates, and they don't really change too much. That's because they've already been anticipated. They've already been baked in, and they've already been accounted for. So that's why he's saying, the act of the Fed lowering rates sometimes doesn't even really do anything, because the market has already accounted for that.
A direct impact on mortgage rates. Right now, the bond market is already pricing in that outlook. So, we'll see how far rates actually move lower, but our view is it's going to be a fairly gradual decline over the next several years, as opposed to a step function lower.
Alan, we talked a lot about supply lately, lack of it, and how that's affected keeping prices higher. But how does a weakening consumer potentially affect home builders? What about demand?
Yeah, it's a great point, John, because, the one thing that trumps lower rates is a recession. So what we've seen historically is a slowing economy, a slowing job market. That's going to overwhelm any relief we might see in mortgage rates, at least as far as fundamentals are concerned. The stocks might react in advance of that and kind of with the anticipation that the recession might be short-lived, and ultimately Fed stimulus and lower rates will kind of spur demand and spur the economy. But, we are concerned about the direction of the economy and the consumer. And right now, if we can orchestrate a soft landing and lower rate environment, that is the Goldilocks scenario for housing, but it's definitely threading a needle.
Yeah. So far, so good, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. Threading that needle absolutely is true. The soft landing thing was pumped up by the Fed early on. It looked like that was going to go by the wayside and we were headed for a recession. Now it doesn't look like it's so much. So it's still very up in the air. And like the guest on the show said, if the average home buyer feels the economy putting pressure on them, they're going to immediately cease looking to buy a home. They're just not going to do it. They're not going to move. They're not going to take on that unknown. They're not going to, spend a bunch of money. They don't have the excess cash for the down payment, especially if they're first-time home buyers, because they can't leverage the equity in their current home. So again, that's one of those things where it really depends on what happens with the Fed, what happens with the economic outlook. And again, that clip was kind of more applied to new homes as opposed to existing homes. But new homes are kind of a good general metric and nation average to kind of gauge the overall home buying consumer. But again, real estate is extremely hyper local, and you can't just apply things to blanket statement all over everything. So that's why if you're looking for real estate, you need to consult a local expert, a local realtor. If you need help finding a local realtor, you can send me an email or DM. You can comment here. I have a network of agents all over the country that are experts in what they do. So if you need help, reach out to me. I can get you connected. Also, if you're looking for real estate advice, buy, sell, or lease in the greater Los Angeles area, I can help you personally with that. You can leave a comment or you can email me. Don't forget, if you like the stream, enjoy the content, please drop a like on the video, drop a comment, tell me what you liked, tell me what's going on in your area, your neck of the woods when it comes to real estate. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening. I'll see you on the next stream.